welcome to the Enlightenment. I'm your host, Daniel. With me today are Charlie and Mark. Say hi, Charlie and Mark.
Hi, Charlie and Mark.
Hello.
Alrighty. Today we will be discussing ethics. A very broad topic. We'll try to get into a lot of different specifics and hop along them. Today's structure is a bit different than last week, so we're not doing big sort of formulated questions. We'll actually start with I guess it's a tradition we have in a philosophy club that we really like doing. It's called agree, disagree. So I'm just going to read statements, and everyone says whether or not they agree or whether they agree or disagree with them. You can't say you don't agree or disagree with them. I guess we've had that before, but please don't. And then explain why, and after everyone answers, explain why, and sort of we can have a discussion about it. So the first one, I hope, is a pretty simple and non-controversial agree-disagree statement. Murder is always wrong. Putting that out there. Agree, disagree. Go ahead, folks.
I'm gonna say, agree. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, always, probably not. I'd say disagree.
Alrighty. Yeah, I think, well, let's try to simulate the philosophy club environment. So, I guess in philosophy club we usually stand a certain position in the room, where one side of the room is agree and one side is disagree. So, let's say, give me a number between 1 to 5, where 5 is hard agree and 1 is hard disagree.
2.6 agree. I'm about as close to I feel like I need to kind of, I really don't totally, I don't want to say I don't know.
Well, I was surprised. I thought this would be an easy one.
1 to 5?
Yeah, well, 1 is totally disagree, 5 is totally agree.
Yeah, probably 2 or something. Most of the time it's bad, but
well, that would be sort of
not inherently.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you could I feel like you have to make exceptions. It's either you can say it's basically wrong, but here's some exceptions, or I feel like you could kind of it's sort of like you can, or you could say you can't really say that it's always wrong because there are exceptions, but it's mostly wrong. You could kind of frame it either way, and I don't really know which way I actually want to land. I mean, I guess you could say that maybe it's always wrong, but it's sometimes justifiable. I mean, that's I don't know.
That's a pretty cool position. No, I think that's legitimate. I would probably put myself on a 4.5, but I would definitely still keep some exceptions. If you're doing it for,
what I mean, it's like a serial killer just killing people for fun. I think that's wrong, right?
It's pretty bad.
But it's
yeah,
self-defense. I don't know.
Self-defense is probably, if not the most defensible position there, or if it's not the most, then the only other thing would be.
I mean, it's the most defensive position.
Right. Yeah, I would probably put the only thing I would put as less bad than self-defense is if it's absolutely accidental, which almost doesn't exist, because you could say it's negligence, you could say it's a lot of things, right?
Well, would it be murder? I mean, would it be manslaughter? I don't know.
Well, legally it would, but I'm stretching this out, to more of the philosophical definition, I guess. So if you do something
should we be clear? Is it just killing someone? Should we, instead of
I guess
murder,
I should just say kill. Yeah, sure, killing a person. I should clarify a person, because I think once you introduce killing other living things, then it gets a bit more controversial. But just as far as killing people,
another human being is always wrong. Agree,
yes.
Disagree. I almost feel like removing the murder aspect from it actually opens it up more.
Yeah.
So I would say that actually I'm even more disagree, because it's once you say killing someone else, it's then you can have accidental stuff as well as justifiable but regrettable things, and it's I think that you can't just say that it's I don't know, yeah.
Darn. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna try and make this simpler, because this is getting if we're having trouble with this one, The next ones are gonna be tough. So I'm just gonna say, if it's at all, like, if it's non-trivial, if it's more wrong than right, then, you know, then it's wrong. We're gonna classify it as wrong, but then we're gonna have all the caveats of, you know, but it obviously depends on the situation. So, like, I'm just gonna jump into another one here. I have one, like, lying is wrong. So, like, in that one, I think it's more really about, like, is there anything inherently wrong, really, in the lying itself? To draw from that example, sort of, do you think there's anything inherently bad about murder, even though it could be maybe justified in some situations?
I mean, yeah, like, that's complicated. I mean, because with lying, it's like, I feel like it's like more about like the repercussions of like, interesting. I think the thing is, it's like something that you're doing that you have complete control over, that it's just like it connects to your interactions with other people. But like, I feel like the thing that's tricky about murder is that it's like you're also like directly ending someone's life, and it's like, I guess there's like I feel like there's three parties in murder. There's like you, the person you're killing, and like everyone else. But with lying, there's only like you and everyone else. And I feel like that's the distinction there to me that like makes murder easier to say that it's inherently wrong, and lying less easy to say that it's inherently wrong. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That kind of makes
But,
sense.
like,
Yeah.
You know, it's like yeah, that it's like you know, because I guess you could say that the thing that's bad about lying is that it could make other people feel bad or whatever. And like the thing that's bad about murder is also that it can make other people feel wrong or feel bad, but it's also that like this other person stops existing. And it's like that sort of, they both have that in common, but like the loss of human life is like another kind of layer on murder. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of distinction between the two. I think we can probably, I mean, it's interesting. I think our average is about, what is like a 2.9 or a 2.8 on murder is wrong. So, like, we're not all murderers, but, you know, yeah, I obviously understand the caveats there. I can see a lot of situations at which it would be justified. I think there is something inherently wrong with it. Because of what you said, you're like ending this other party's life. So, I mean, you'd have to go at least some far away, I think, in order to make that okay. There's interesting border cases. Do you think it's okay for retribution? So, like, if someone kills, I don't know, a family member of yours, is it okay for you to kill them? Or, like, I don't know, even family members of theirs? Is that something you think is moral?
I mean, it's certainly. I feel like an eye for an eye. Like, I feel like that's just like sort of increasing. World suck. I don't know. Like, if you like, I don't know. I feel like in general, like anything where someone is like anything where there's like a, I don't know, why can't I find my words? Just that if. Yeah, like, you know, there's a person that no longer exists, and that's like not good. And that is sort of like, just because that one person was lost, it's like I feel like the need for like retribution or like some sort of sense of like revenge or justice in that sense is really like unnecessary, and it's really just more about like, I don't know, that just like increases the amount of suffering. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think I have a really stupid example for this that I just remembered. I came up with like earlier discussions. I don't think I introduced here. So this is like a total abuse of the trolley problem, which is a common theme with trolley problems. So I think it's sort of the murder retribution thing. It's sort of like if you had a lever to pull, right? Someone is tied to a tracks, and there's a. If you pull the lever, there's a trolley, it's about to hit them, but it will actually go to a different track, which is empty. So no one else is killed if you just switch the lever. But you know that person has just not switched the switch for the previous person in the problem, and so they're responsible for killing that person. Would it be fair to not also kill them? But also then, if you choose to kill them, should you also be put on the tracks for the next person in line? That's sort of an infinitely murderous trolley problem. Because it's sort of like, it's not fair not to kill this person if they killed someone. And then, but you just killed someone too. So should you also be killed? And then keep it going. I said it was definitely an abuse of the trolley problem. But I think if we're just doing like a death count, there's an easy distinction to be made there where, like, if you just consider murder as bad and revenge murder is bad, but like self-defense would probably be a lot more defensible because it's, switch the trolley so you don't get killed, which is, it's definitely better than just switching it so a person is killed instead of no one. This is a tangent. Alright, let's go to number 2. Physical assault is always wrong. Agree, disagree?
It feels very similar to murder. Like,
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it is different, right? Because, and it's not final. It's not fatal.
Yeah. I mean, so if anything, it's more. It's like it's less agreeable. It's not. It's like even less wrong. Of course, there's always the risk that you end up killing someone if you're like attacking them. But I feel like it's basically the same discussion. I mean, it's. Like
I would put it all the way down to a 3. Like, I'm willing to go down a lot for that one. Because, like, I think there's even situations at which you don't have to be physically assaulted in order to justify physical assault. I think those situations exist. And so, I would think it's usually wrong.
Well, again, it's like, what should we do? It's like, I feel like, okay, so what does physical assault mean? It's
like battery. Like, so, like, you just hit someone to cause harm.
Like,
roughly.
Yeah, like,
not like a gentle, fist bump or whatever.
So what about putting someone in a headlock?
Yeah, sure. That seems like bad in general. But like, what if that person is like threatening your life or something? Like, if I hold the gun to you, I didn't do anything yet, but
Because is that assault? I guess so. I mean, well, so if you held a gun to someone, that wouldn't be battery. I guess, yeah. If you like put someone in a headlock, that would be assault, probably.
Or not even just that, but like, let's say if someone just I don't know, like, burn down your house. I mean, the house is already burnt down, right? Like, you're not gonna get the house back by assaulting them. But I wouldn't be, like, I wouldn't judge you. I wouldn't say, that was wrong. How dare you punch this person now, Like, I think it's more of a just world if you hit them then.
It's more just if you hit them after they've burned your house than if you don't hit them?
Yes, that is my opinion.
No, I completely disagree.
You disagree? Okay.
Punching them is just like literally a waste of time.
Okay.
Like that's literally just like makes the world worse.
What is your criteria then? Is it ever? Well, I'm sure it's sometimes, right? Because you said that you're the only agree.
Literally just to like prevent like if you can reduce the overall, like, essentially, so if you have probable cause to think that they're going to do things that are worse to you, right? Like, the net amount of stuff that they would do to you would be more than, like, the amount of assault that you would need to do to them to stop them from doing those things. Like, you'd say, like, they're going to, like, punch you and, knock you down and then, like, stomp on you or whatever. And it's like, all you need to do to stop that is just, like, grab them and put them on the ground. And then I feel like that.
Now I'm curious. I want to challenge that if you don't mind.
Sure.
So that's interesting because, like, if the only thing that matters at the end is a total amount of suffering or death after the fact, then, like, if you get attacked by, like, a gang of, like, very hard criminals, like, really not armed but very muscular, very fit criminals, they're just trying to, like, punch you. They're not gonna kill you, probably. They just want to rob you, so they're just gonna punch the shit out of you. Get all your money. And you have a gun, so you can try and shoot. Maybe not kill, but harm them. Even maybe kill. Would you say the moral thing would be just let them do what they do? Total amount of suffering is less if you get punched without reason than if they get shot with reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated, but I guess my inclination is to say, well, like I guess certainly from my perspective, if I were ever in that situation, I just wouldn't even try to, I would just say, look, if you're here for my money, you can have my wallet. It's just like you don't need to attack me. That again, that just increases the amount of world suck. I mean, like again, if I'm
Well,
going to
we
lose
don't have
my
to go with money.
wallet
I see
and
if like you don't appreciate the money too much, right? But like I'm gonna take this to a much more controversial one then, just because I
Okay.
love dwelling in this. So, if you
Yes.
were a girl and a bunch of these gang members came by, and they weren't looking for money, but they were looking to abuse you sexually,
yeah.
at that point, are you justified in straight up, possibly even killing, but at the very least shooting to harm them to protect yourself, even though world suffering. If it's more people dying or suffering, I'm assuming will be higher. What do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like complicated. Like, I feel like that's a personal choice, right? I guess so. I can't really speak to that personally, but I guess it's like, again, I think that like you could. I mean, that's so difficult.
Yeah, it's not an easy question by any means. I
Yeah,
just think,
I mean,
that
I
criteria you
probably
have
would
is
say,
pretty
like,
narrow.
definitely.
You
I
would?
think.
that you could attack them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll do it for money, so I mean, But yeah, for the other thing too, obviously. But like, if you also told me, would you go hunt someone down for money? I would say no. So it's not like it's the money itself that makes it
So I guess the
justified.
question
It's
is,
more
it's
of the
like-
principle of, if something is wrong, it's right to stop it.
So I guess I'm trying to think about whether I want to amend, like whether it's just like if there's any amount of suffering that you would incur because of their actions, then that authorizes you. Like, I guess.
Could you add in a
guess what I would say
criteria?
is
Because like I like the
If
criteria of
there's
suffering.
any, if there's,
But
yeah.
can you also
Or whatever.
add the criteria, the supplementary one, don't drop suffering. Like, I think suffering is always something to be considered, and death, obviously. But also have justice, which means, if...
No, justice is bullshit. Justice is bullshit.
Well, that's
So
where
let
we
me
disagree,
say
I guess. But I
so let
respect
me
your
say
position. Yeah.
What I want to say is that I think that if there's any amount of harm to be incurred to you, then that authorizes you to do exactly as much as is needed to make that harm like zero, or to minimize that harm.
So you have the absolute
that
right
is-
to self-protection.
Yes.
I don't know that I would agree with that, though. Like, I can try and keep posing difficult positions at you. I'm hoping
Sure,
you're okay
sure.
with that. I think it's, like, cool to investigate,
Yes.
because I think for me it's really hard to formulate a concrete position. It sounds like you have one, which is very cool. But I think if I challenge it, maybe it can be sharpened, and we can all come out of it with more, I guess, with a more refined
I don't even
view.
think I have a concrete. I don't even think any of this matters. I think I'm literally just making crap up. But anyways,
It's, well, that is welcome to Philosophy Club. All right, so I guess here's another position, right? Here's where I draw the distinction between suffering, even like self-preservation and suffering, and justice, and which is why I don't think justice is bullshit. Because let's say, you have some evil genius or whatever who's about to like inflict tremendous tortures upon you, right? We're getting to the realm of absolute hypotheticals here, but this evil madman is about to inflict great suffering and eventually probably death. And you could easily prevent that. You have a contract signed, and this person really respects contracts. It will definitely not do anything bad at all to you if you just shoot this innocent baby. So he just provides an innocent baby, He's saying, like, if you don't touch him, I'll release him, send him back to the parents or whatever. But if you just shoot this baby, which is all that's needed to prevent harm to you, would you be justified in just, shooting that baby?
So let me, like, apply my definition. Okay. So there is imminent threat to you, right? So that authorizes you to take whatever steps are needed to attempt to achieve the minimum amount of net suffering. And so the thing is, it's like, then it's literally just weighing, like, your amount of suffering and inevitable death, potential future death or whatever, versus, like, a baby. And it's like, I don't know if one life is more valuable than another life. I guess what I would say is probably the two lives are probably equivalent, but because you have authority, like I feel like the child, like this person, this baby can't like understand, and they're not in control of the situation, but like you are. And so if like you're both, one person is going to die, but like you're the person who's making the choice, I feel like you should die. Like I don't know, like you know what I mean? I don't know. That's like the only reason I guess I can argue out of that. I mean, you could also make some sort of claim like a baby's life is more valuable because they have longer to live or something. But I think that it's better to argue from the position that like all human lives are equal. But I feel like then because you have a choice, like because you're in charge, I feel like I don't know. Maybe I feel like it's more noble to die yourself than to like kill a baby if one person has like if it's like there's like two minimums on the function of suffering, and it's like I don't know.
This is interesting. I think I would agree with you. My own thing is about the quality of living things, right? So like I'm gonna put this. Sorry, Mark, we've been like excluding you just because I've been grilling Charlie here. I'm sorry. You can answer this too. I'll just pose final posing before we go on to the next one, unless someone else wants to offer a thought experiment. So my final tweak would be, if it was you, who was about to get inflicted with undue suffering, you didn't do anything to deserve this, you were randomly selected by this evil madman, okay? And then they also select, like, I don't know, some warlord, from some war-torn country, who has been responsible for, like, making death camps, and has, like, personally done, like, multiple rapings and, terrible, vile acts.
Yeah.
And this person, is gonna go out scot-free, not even gonna get, like, serve his time or whatever. It's gonna be released back to inflict, well, not even, I guess it's more difficult if he inflicts torture, but, like, let's say he's gonna be left alone to live like a regular person in society, but he has already done so many bad things. Does that come into calculation? Would you shoot the warlord to save yourself, or is it the same as the baby?
So okay, so you're saying like this? Wait a second. What does it have to do with the baby? Wait,
it's the same example, but instead of a baby, it's now a warlord.
Instead of the baby, you've got the warlord. Okay, right.
Yes.
So,
and just to make it simpler, I will. Sorry, just to no, I don't mean to interrupt. Just like to make it as simple as possible. If you let this warlord out, he's not gonna commit more crimes or terrible acts. He's just gonna be a regular person out there.
Oh well, then I think that you should still die. I was going to pose another question where it's like, if there was another person that you could, like, I think the other thing that's tricky about a baby is that it's like, they can't even understand what's going on. You can't even talk to them, right? But it's like, if you could like talk to the other person and they could say, no, actually, I want to die. Then I feel like you could be justified in saying, okay, then I'll have them killed. But I guess the warlord thing or whatever, the evil person, the hypothetical evil person that you would be, person who has, well, so if it's a person who has committed evil, then they're just a person. Who cares? You can't change the past has happened. If they're not going to do anything else, like, okay, so if you have the condition they did bad things in the past, but they're not going to do bad things in the future, then it's completely moot, in my opinion. It's like, literally, who cares? I mean, in the sense that it's like, it goes back to the same thing of the two things being equal. And I guess maybe it's more noble for you to die because whatever. If you don't know if they're going to be, like, they have been evil in the past, you can't predict the future, like, they might be more evil in the future, or even if you know that they might be more evil in the future, that's, like, tricky. I guess you could say that, you have to take in the cumulative amount of suffering. And I would say that it's probably better for them to die than for you to die, assuming that you're not going to, assuming that you're always trying to minimize suffering. And I think probably chances are the amount of suffering would be lower if you were to live than if this evil person were to live who's going to continue to do evil things. I don't know.
Okay, that's good. I was just going to try and ask you about the very existence of the justice system, but since you added that last part, it definitely explains at least that, right? Sort of like put criminals in jail so that they don't continue actively to commit crimes.
Well, I mean, the justice system's a whole other mess.
Right. But like the
I
principle
mean,
of it existing, because if you just say you can't predict the future at all, and so if someone committed a crime, too bad. I mean, you can't undo the crime, so just let them go. But then you added, there is a risk of them doing it again, which at the very least justifies, I think, some form of
okay, well,
like law enforcement.
Okay, so the question is, it's like, what does that look like? Because I agree that if somebody has done something, that maybe means that there's like a risk that they might do something again, and that like that probably authorizes like everyone has I suppose everyone has a risk of doing anything. You can't predict the future. Well, I mean, anyway, you can't predict the future, and so, and I think that it's like if this person has already done something bad, then I guess you like probably have reason. Like that, like if anyone is going to be suspected of doing these things in the future, the people who've already done it before are probably the prime candidates. But it's like, does that mean that does that mean that like they should just go rot in a cell? I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like just like having people sort of go to prison is like and just sit there and do nothing is like completely useless in my opinion. Like that's like literally just again, I think that just increases world suck, right? But it's like maybe you could make the case that I don't know, it's like if like I think the ideal situation would be for people who could be helped to like have them be rehabilitated in some way. I think that that's preferable. To,
Yeah,
like,
I would
this
definitely agree
sense
with
of,
that.
like,
Yeah.
and so then it's like, why should it's like it's difficult to say. Maybe there are some people that like can't be helped, or who are always going to be at risk. And that's like the problem with that is like how do you decide? But I guess I think for the most part people should be. I mean, in the same way that we assume that people are innocent until proven guilty, we should assume people are rehabilitatable unless we have other evidence that is to say like we've tried before and it didn't work. Because I think it's my personal opinion that most people, like nobody is inherently evil. I mean, maybe there are people who like, no, I mean, I honestly am not sure that anyone is like actually inherently evil. That's my hot take.
I mean, some people are sadistic, which means they love suffering. I don't know if this necessarily makes them evil, but I don't know according to your definition if it does. Like, would you say an inclination to suffering makes someone evil?
Probably not. I mean, again, it's like because I think those people can probably like find a way that to like satisfy that desire to like inflict suffering on someone that like can understand that or whatever, consent or whatever you want to get into. I feel like you could you don't have to, it doesn't have to be but it's like, okay, it's like if this person is going out and hurting other people, like vulnerable, like they're making victims, and then I feel like it's still possible that they might be able to get help. I mean, it's like I think that nothing is static, and I don't think that like maybe even if you always have those sort of desires, I feel like it doesn't define you as a person. You can still do things to work on controlling that.
Yeah, I think you have like a very strong emphasis on sort of compassion, but also just generally it's like a deterministic view of human beings, which is like, something has led you to do this, but it doesn't mean that, we can't make it so you don't do it again.
Well, I almost feel like that's like the exact opposite of deterministic. Like I feel like I'm actually saying that nobody is determined to do anything. I mean, of course, we can all like determinism is a whole other.
Yeah.
I think that I'm not saying we should talk about determinism, but
we will have that episode eventually because we're legally obliged to.
But I mean, if we could, anyways, no.
We're determined to have it, but
Anyway,
we've been pushing it back.
Yeah. 2 weeks. So, like, I guess that it's like you are not defined by your past actions. Everything about a person is changeable, pretty much. That's my hot take. I mean, okay,
Cool.
not everything, but it's like, well, pretty much everything, actually. Is there anything about a person that's not changeable? Like, literally anything? I mean, I guess, like, maybe, like, the day they were born.
Well, that's the past, right? Like anything in the present.
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably.
Yeah, you couldn't change it going
Anything.
forward, yeah.
I don't know.
Like, literally, is there anything you couldn't change about a human?
I mean, you couldn't turn them into anti-gravity particles, I don't think. But, you know.
Right, okay. Within the laws of physics, I guess.
Yes. I said personality and such, I think it can get
I mean, it's like
almost
you could even,
impossible to do,
like,
to certain extents.
there's surgeries to, like, change how tall someone is. I feel like
Yeah.
literally anything is mutable.
Well, I think it can become so tough that you would reach a block where you couldn't go any further. Like, I can definitely see, even with, like, rehabilitation, I could definitely see there being people that, like, the more you try at a certain point, no matter what technique you use, it's gonna make them worse. Like, I think that we're just gonna get some of those people out there, which is why I don't think, like, all
I still feel like
sentences should be
I feel
paroled,
like-
but, you know.
I guess I would say I feel like spending, like, rather than just leaving this person, abandoning this person to sit in a jail cell for the rest of their life, I feel like you should still try to rehabilitate them
Oh,
forever.
yeah. I think
it
that the
sounds
first
stupid,
approach
it's
should be, like, try rehabilitate, right?
But I
But,
guess I'm saying even if it doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
even if you need to, like, keep them somewhere, like a prison, I feel like you should still be trying to rehabilitate them the entire time, even if you think it's a lost cause. I don't know. Like,
I mean,
it's like,
you wouldn't be able to pay me to
like-
do it, but yeah, I mean, I see your justification for it.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like you should basically be in prison until you are rehabilitated or dead.
Yeah. I mean, more
And I mean,
interestingly, as far as,
or
like, good and evil,
until people think you are.
yeah.
And then, of course, if you, like, prove that, then if they let you go and then you turn out to not have been rehabilitated,
Oh, yeah.
then it's like, I don't know, you bring them back in and you're more careful the second time. I don't know.
I mean, these are, like, things of facts that are interesting, and I would like to get deeper in them. But I think, especially because we're, like, half an hour in, I think I'm gonna try and, jump to the next one. But beforehand, I'm just gonna try and make a fundamental distinction, because we did get into a bit of attention about, like, law enforcement and all of that, and I think it's a really interesting one. So I think there's a fundamental difference in views between me and you, and I'm not sure, like, I'll ask Mark in 1 second about it too after I finish explaining it. So I think the distinction is, if there was the rehabilitation ray, as in, like, there's a gun you can shoot, like a laser type, magic ray onto someone, and you can shoot this ray at someone, and they'll be like a grade A good citizen. They'll still be their own personality. It wouldn't be like mind control, but they would basically understand that what they did was wrong and not do it again, right? If there was that, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you would be okay with, as soon as they're sentenced, shooting them with that ray and letting them go. And I would not. I would want them to still serve some punishment, not for them, but for everyone else in society and the victims.
Yeah, I can't even disagree with that any more than.
I understand that. That's why I said there's two different views. Mark, what do you think? Where do you
Sorry,
fall?
what was the ray?
The scenario, the ray instantly rehabilitated someone, so it made them not commit crimes again out of their own free will. Like, it made them understand their mistakes and not repeat. Would you, if you could shoot them, would you still jail them at all, or would you just shoot them and let them go immediately?
I mean,
Like,
I
is
shoot
there
them
any-
and go immediately.
Yeah, like, is there any need for a person to, like, serve time?
I would think so.
Yeah, not really. Only under, like, pragmatic
Mhm.
reasons, if, like, they can't be rehabilitated or whatever. But, like, if you can, yeah, I don't think, like, retribution's, like, a legitimate thing, no.
Yeah, retribution is bullshit.
I think it's a very ancient form of justice that is come a bit under favor in our current society, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. So I mean, it's up to debate, right? I think it's about a good time to sort of summarize this one. Let's jump into. I think we can rush through the rest and then get to the more interesting second question, because I think that's a really cool place to dive in. So, I'm just gonna run through them, agree, disagree, and then if there's any interesting ones, we can start talking about them. So, doing harm to someone is wrong. Agree, disagree.
I feel like that's very similar to like all of the
Yeah.
other like.
That's why we can rush through.
Or,
So, like, what do you think? 1 to 5.
I don't even want to get into it because again, my position is nuanced, but it's the same as all these other. Closer to assault.
Disagree,
Yeah.
Okay, I would say wrong, but okay. Like, I would say it is wrong, so I agree. But all right. Next one. Making someone.
You'd say that doing harm to someone is wrong, or
fundamentally it's wrong, but it's not always wrong. But there is something wrong about it, is what I would say.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know. We don't need to argue about this.
Essentially,
I would say that it's not inherently doing harm to someone. No, actually, no, never mind. I'm being stupid. Yes, it is wrong, but it's like
I would be surprised if you disagreed after everything we just went through with all the suffering theory. Yeah. Okay. Making someone happy is right.
No, that's a whole other. That's
thing. Very different. That's why I put both there. I don't think they're repetitive at all.
Nope. I hard disagree.
Yep, as well. Well, I would say probably like a 4. So probably a 2, not a 1, but a 2. So like mostly disagree. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I disagree. Like 1.
Yep. I think. Do you even want to get into like why do we all disagree? Is it like basically happiness can be the opposite of what a person needs sometimes, and like if you just try to make them happy, then you might be doing them a disservice.
We should all just like sit on a park bench and be injected with drugs continuously. It's like
that's bad.
It's like happiness is not
it's not the way. This is the way of the devil. Okay.
Yeah.
Any groundbreaking points before you go into lying is wrong?
No.
All right, lying is wrong. Agree, disagree.
It's let's see. I'm gonna say, lying is wrong. Disagree.
Disagree with that. Disagree. Okay. So like, all right, Mark, what do you think?
Is lying wrong? No. I'd say most of the time it probably is, but
okay.
There's always exceptions.
I mean, that's such a big one. I want to have a whole meeting about it, but for now, I'll just say for me, it's a pretty strong disagree. Pretty strong agree. Sorry, so like a 4.5 agree on lying is wrong. Do you guys want to get a bit into it, or should we like continue?
I don't know. I feel like
my reasoning's basically the same as for murdering. Really.
Okay.
As in, well, what do you mean? Because you said murder is bad, no?
No, I mean, my position's basically the same as Charlie's. Like,
okay,
murdering's fine. Like, I'm fine with murdering Hitler.
Right.
And I'm fine with like lying to someone in order to like get Hitler to like not kill people or something.
So like, but, it's just a tool that you should not abuse, kind of thing. Right.
I think usually lying is not a good idea. But like theoretically it can be good.
Okay.
I feel like lying is like literally completely morally ambiguous. It just like it depends on what you're like. I mean, because it's like if you lie about like the fact that you're planning a surprise birthday party, like that's completely harmless. In fact, it's actually I would say positive. It's like oh, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. And it's like, but actually, you're whatever. You're like planning to surprise this person or something. I mean, I don't know. This is like a stupid hypothetical, but
I think it's like a difficult one, right? Because there's like a lot of really trivial ones, like the ones you just brought up, like surprise birthday party or something. Well, like if it's trivial, it's not like murder, which is never trivial, right? So lying is obviously trivial sometimes,
right?
But I would still argue there's a very strong reason why in critical information it's very, very, very bad. Not just because it could lead to bad outcomes. Like, obviously, it could lead to bad outcomes if you tell someone something that's like the opposite of the truth, and then they end up doing things that harm them, right? Like, that's bad. But the really bad part is that they did things that harmed them. Well, I would also argue just giving someone a false impression of reality is inherently a very bad thing to do to them. other than like trivial examples like a birthday party. So like I think it's very important for people to have a good perception of reality, and so lying is sort of depriving them of like one of the most fundamental tools they have to live in the world.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so I guess I should say that. So I think that the way that you can talk about the first thing you brought up, not the second thing, because the second thing's interesting. I don't want to talk about that more. It's just like about whether there's harm. It's like whether there's like harm to be had to the world at large because of the lie, and that's like how you can kind of gauge that. But I guess I want to I want to address the whether inherently like deceiving someone is inherently bad.
Can you give me any example which will be definitely
like a magic
good?
trick? A magic trick?
A magic trick. Sure.
I don't know. I mean, it's like,
yeah. That's a good one.
And it's like, again, that's kind of trivial, right? But it's like, yeah, it's like, I feel like it's too hard to say like that thing is, and so I'm just trying to see if there's anything that I can extract out of the bad things or out of the good things because I don't want to say, well, deceiving someone is either good and bad, and it's a completely case-by-case analysis that depends entirely on the exact situation. And it's like, well, that's bullshit. There's got to be something there.
I can give you a test.
I'm having a hard time.
Based on just the examples you provided now, until you provide me with an example that breaks my test. I can provide a test that if it's like a short-term deceit about something that would have like basically no effect over their lives, like a magic trick, even if they don't get it, it's not going to change how they view the world. They're not going to start believing in magic now, right? I mean, it's just a magic trick. And like the birthday party, they found out after like half an hour or whatever. So like if it's a short-term lie with no significance to their life, then it's probably fine. But don't abuse the test. Like if someone asks you, I think Sam Harris has a really classic, he's a great advocate for truth, I think. And he has a very classic example of like your wife asks you like, do I look good in distress or whatever? And it's like, oh, it's such a small lie to just say yes. But, you think, oh, it's just a short-term lie to make her happy. Like, what's the big deal? But then he said, think about, 6 months ahead of time. Like, I don't know, maybe like she takes the stress and I don't know, I forget the exact example. I think it's more about weight. So maybe like she then realizes, oh no, I've gained too much weight, I feel terrible. Like I feel like I can't go to the beach anymore. And if only I had noticed like the signs earlier, if someone have been more honest and like maybe hurtfully honest, then it would have been better. So like I think it's too easy to underestimate how bad lying can be.
I mean, I guess like the thing that really stuck out to me is like an example of leading to someone to like have a false belief in something that's like really dangerous would be something like a cult, right? Like that's like, really bad.
The whole thing is one big terrible lie, and like people used to enslave others, right?
Right. So like that seems like to me, but I'm just trying to think if there's like, like
except for my cult, by the way. Join at Michael. Right.
Yeah. Join at notacult.org.
Oh no! I hope we're not actually sending traffic to that website now. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know if that website exists. We have no affiliation with it. Anyways.
Yeah. So would you say? Do you think there's something wrong with like a powerful, life-altering deceit on someone?
I mean, it's like a person, but I guess I think the reason that I think that like this cult thing is bad is because it causes like bad things to happen. And I feel like those things are maybe actually a thing that's bad. And maybe it's not the lie that's actually bad.
Oh, that's true. I guess if you had the cult that like the only thing it did with all of its like false idols or whatever is make everyone who's on board have like a healthy diet, maybe. Or I don't know, or like play a lot of chess.
Just, like literally just like think something that's not true. Like what if the cult was just like thinking that the sky was yellow? Like that's not really harmful.
Yeah, I mean, true.
And it's like a change of perception that's permanent that affects them for the rest of their life.
That's actually a really good test case. Maybe that can actually prove that lying is not inherently wrong. I guess If you had a lie
I think
that
it's
was
literally
perception
just about,
altering,
yeah, how it plays out later.
because I would have to go on a really long stretch to make that like a bad idea to do, right? Like I would have to come up with a ridiculous example, so it's probably not actually bad. I feel like lying is a dangerous game, but maybe you've convinced me to come down to like a 3 on how bad it actually is. Like maybe it has a lot of dangerous badness like potential, but it isn't as inherently bad as like murder, right?
Well, yeah, it's like I think that you should obviously conduct yourself to try and minimize world suck or whatever. And it's like, okay, so if this lie will result in, a net negative, then it's bad. And if it will, result in 0 or a net positive, then I'd say it's fine.
I really like the ethics of world suck. I might adopt some of those principles. That sounds like a watered down version of utilitarianism, right?
That's not my quote, actually. I don't know if you've heard of John Green, but John Green and Vlog Brothers, other people, their YouTube channel.
Nice.
Yeah, they talk about decreasing world suck. I think they actually have like a charity. So like it's like an actual 503c like foundation over like something decreasing world suck or whatever. I don't know. It's pretty funny.
That's really funny. Yeah, it's like because I'm not up for utilitarianism, but this sounds like a version of it that might be like I'm most susceptible to. That's a pretty cool version because it's not about like increasing pleasure by any means. It's really just about, and it's not even necessarily about decreasing suffering. It's just the stuff that sucks. So like specifically the suffering that sucks is bad, which is just a lot easier to swallow, All right, let's see how it applies. Any groundbreaking points before we go on to loyalty is good?
No, nothing so, no.
All right. Loyalty is good. Agree, disagree?
I'm gonna say that anything good, like any of these things that is like this is good. Nah, I think you can only talk about bad. Like that's the frame of like decreasing world suck.
Whoa.
There's no good. There's only
nothing is good.
Bad.
That's a depressing thought. I don't know if I'm up for that.
Right, nothing is good. There's just things that are less bad. That's like the fundamental frame.
I think you just put a very dark twist on the ethics of world suck. I don't know if I want to be a member anymore. I don't know. That sounds that sounds dark. But I guess so. Then you completely disagree with that one. I assume.
But it's like entropy. There's no reversing entropy. You know what I mean? It's like it's just about trying to decrease world suck. There's no you can try and minimize the amount of entropy you create, but there's always going to be some entropy, and you can't have like a decrease in entropy. You can only have a smaller increase in entropy.
I don't know. I'll tell you what. Well, okay, I have a point about that, but I think we've been depriving Mark of entering anything. So, Mark,
yes,
loyalty is good. Agree, disagree?
I mean, loyalty to whom?
Exactly.
It's more about like the principle of it. So, do you think there's something inherently good with being loyal? No. Okay, so disagree as well. I think it kind of disagree,
it depends on what you're being loyal to.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take a devil's advocate position. Because I just want to get some of these arguments out, because I think there is a position here. I haven't actually tried to justify it ever, but here goes a try. If you're trying to develop relationships with others, right? And you're trying to do something like, let's say, being loyal to your like sport team, right? So let's say you're in a sports team, like the Patriots or whatever, right? And you have a bad season. For some reason, I think, what was it, Brady just quit, right? So I don't know, it's probably going to be a bad season once COVID is done and all of that. So let's say it's been a bad season, and you think, oh, I've just got a really good offer from a different team. There's nothing wrong with me just going by. And I would think there is. There is something wrong there, because the team is sort of, you're dependent on it to like get better, and it's been working to get you better all the time. But they're also depending on you to get better, because you're also a contributing factor. So I guess it's sort of like, in order to develop long-lasting relationships, some degree of loyalty is always necessary. And so that's why I think loyalty is just a good thing in general. Can the disagree camp explain why not?
Maybe you could say those relationships are good, but I think that the loyalty is too much of a... You should attribute things to what actually causes them, and not like what's required to them. Like it's like
Hmm.
if something is good, that doesn't mean the things that you need to do it are necessarily good. I mean, it's like maybe doing those things in the pursuit of achieving the thing that's good is good, but like the things themselves, I don't know. I think you can't like bring goodness down.
So it's almost like lying. Like it's not fundamentally right, but it can be right a lot of the time.
Well, okay, it's not fundamentally. Well, again, I think that lying is not good nor bad. It's about the things that the lying causes.
Yeah.
And I think that loyalty is neither good nor bad. It's about the things that it causes.
Yeah, I'll agree.
Okay. That's an interesting one. I wish I could dive more deeply into that. Maybe we'll save that to another time because I haven't actually prepared anything. I was hoping someone here. I was actually kind of counting on Peter. Unfortunately, was not able to make it. I was hoping someone would be an advocate of the loyalty camp. And that's why also the next one is agree, disagree. Following a just leader is good. What are your opinions?
I would say it's good, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I guess I would say again, it's like the good thing. Like you got to rephrase everything in terms of. I would accept maybe rephrasing this as like doing things to like maybe I wouldn't even say not following, but like trying to dismantle a good leader is bad, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that following a good leader is good.
Okay, I
Or
think I'm gonna
just
join
leader.
your camp, and I'm glad to finally be on that camp because I've been like trying to stick to a liberal view on things as much as I can. At the very least, on following just leader, I think it's not inherently wrong, but the following suggests that you compensate for the leader's bad actions, and I think that's always wrong. So I would say it's never good to just follow a just leader. Maybe you can support the just things that a leader does, but it's not good to just follow them.
That's
Mark,
another good
can you
point.
elaborate on the disagree or on the agree on this?
Well, I feel like it's just by definition, like the leader is just, right? The leader is good, therefore it's like good to follow him. Like, you can like do other things, like being a follower isn't necessarily good, but like supporting him and like, doing whatever, like voting for him or whatever, if he's just, then like by definition that needs to be good.
I think I'm
Because
gonna
that's what
try and
justice is.
put you in some spot here. Feel free to do the same to me, by the way. I'm not trying to I guess drill
Yeah, no,
people or
no.
anything. I'm
you're
trying to
not
get to
trying
interesting
get people
points, but
started.
yeah, feel free to do the same to me. So I guess if you're say a journalist, right, and there is like a leader that you think is a generally good guy or a gal, so it's a pretty good leader that you like. But you see this leader just did something really bad, and it's like a one-off thing. You don't think you didn't change your perception to think of them as a bad leader now. But like, would you try and write a piece that's like supporting the leader even though they did something wrong, to sort of say, well, they're still good. It wasn't that bad, even though maybe you think it is. Or would you say, it doesn't matter, they're just leader. I'm just gonna stick to the thing they did was bad, and so I'm just gonna report it as bad. I'm not looking specifically from a media angle. It's more of like, to what degree is it okay to justify bad things that just people do?
Well, so you have to put into like perspective, right? Like when you say he's a just leader, it's like the implication is whatever he's bad, right? Whatever things he does is bad. Whatever he does that is like good overrides that badness, right?
Yeah, that's
And
the overall
so like
implication.
I think, I'm not saying like you should blindly support a just leader in like every circumstance. Like I think how a good journalist would write that theoretically would be like, this was bad, right, what he did, but like he's also done all this other great stuff, and like he's only human, I guess.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, if say you had, I guess I can try to make an even sharper distinction there. So say a leader, like say you're in an army unit or something, right? And you have this captain leading you to battle, and you know this captain's a really good captain. He's been like saving troops' life, risking his own life. Being real nice. I don't know, being a really good captain is very just. Always try to like spare the locals and everything, and to the best of their ability, sort of just be a good army leader or whatever. But then one day you notice them doing something bad, like maybe they got really like angry or whatever in some battle, and they just shot this innocent like person walking by or something, maybe by accident, but maybe not. It's sort of like it's a tricky situation, but what they did was bad. But more importantly, that you're supposed to report them for it, and if you report them, then they're not going to be the leader anymore. Like, they're going to be put like discharged, maybe even dishonorably discharged, so they're just not going to be your leader anymore. And they're a good leader, but would you report on them or not? Like, would you follow them? I was actually going to go even further. Would you follow them doing something bad just to make sure that they are still the leader if they're overall good?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, it would depend on what it is. Like, ultimately, like, you'd have to look at, right, whether or not this is going to be like a continuous action or something.
Right.
Like, maybe like it doesn't really matter what you say, what you do in the first place, because like you could just not follow him, and like if that doesn't really change his status as as the leader he is, then like that's fine. Like, but like overall, like you're still following him. It's just only in this like one instance you're disagreeing.
Right.
You're still generally supporting him.
Heck, so I can probably make an even more specific example.
I guess no, but
like if they were, say, actively trying to rob this person's house, who wasn't like innocent, but it was just because they were like really hungry and this like food supply didn't arrive, whatever. But it just still was wrong. So maybe you wouldn't follow them into robbery, but you also would still not report them and sort of stick with them as the leader, because they're generally very good leaders.
Yeah, like you gotta weigh your options. It's like, good leaders are a pretty rare thing in general. So I wouldn't be so quick to just like say, "Oh, you're terrible because you did something that I didn't like."
Yeah, I think that's a very sensible position. I think that's a solid, like, I don't remember which number I was on, but I'm probably gonna bring it at least to a 2. Because that seems like in some situations it is generally sensible, because of how rare good leaders are, to stick with them even if it's not morally right necessarily, like even if it's not always right.
Yeah, because like it could be a lot worse, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, Charlie. Are you said like 0 or 1? I forget. Like, what was your position on it?
So it's following a just leader good, geez, I've forgotten what I even said. I've been kind of zoning out for a second.
It says like good doesn't exist or something. Like,
well, yeah,
right.
yeah.
But we've kind of conceded that with the last one, I think, at least to some extent.
Well, okay, so like, no, yeah, I guess I would say that following a good leader or just leader is not good, because it's like, again, my opinion was that maybe you could say that trying to, overthrow a good leader is bad. A leader is not necessarily good. I don't know.
All right, last 2, and then we get to the interesting question number 2. I think this will be a bit of a longer episode, but I think it's worth it, because some of these are very interesting fundamentals that I hope we kind of already arrived at some answer to, using all of these agree disagrees. So these are very, very abstract. We might not have an answer to them, but let's just give it a try. Yeah, see where we land. Order is good, chaos is bad. Very related. I'll just put them in the same category. Agree disagree to that, if you can.
I disagree.
You disagree, okay. Charlie?
Is order good Again, it's like the order. Like if you're talking about something that's like a bad force, then I feel like that having order is not a good thing. Like I feel like everything's relative. I mean, this kind of connects to the same thing, whether order is good or chaos is bad. It's like it completely depends on your frame of reference. It's like if you're talking about chaos within some force, like some group that's trying to do evil things, then I guess you maybe chaos in that group that causes it to stop being effective is good, or order in that group is bad. Yeah, I feel like it's all a frame of reference thing.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if I should even have this one. I still think it has some value, because I think regardless of the reference, at least in my interpretation of justice, it has to have some order. So I would say like a 3 agree maybe. Barely, but I would agree with the overall sentiment that order is better than chaos. I guess that's probably a better way to put it, but then you said it's like basically hard to determine at all, and Mark, you said disagree.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they're equally good, both of them. I think you need a mediation between the two. An excess of them is bad.
An excess of either one of them?
I think is what I would say.
I can see that, yeah. Like extreme order and extreme chaos, I can definitely see as being bad. Yeah. So, those ones are, I don't want to get too lost on them. They're very abstract. Do you guys have any groundbreaking points on the agree disagrees before we go on to question number 2?
I can go on, sure.
I think we can move on, yeah.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna read out some interpretation of ethics. If you recognize one or multiple ones as ones you agree with, then say so and talk about why. And if you don't, then at the end, just say what you do think is ethics in general, or more specific than that. But all right, A. Ethics are a fundamentally real aspect of the universe. They are transcendental and exist regardless of what people believe. This is sort of like the view of there being objective ethics. B. Ethics are a social tool of organizing human civilization. They develop through evolution and vary by peoples and circumstances. C. Ethics are a personal guide that brings meaning to an otherwise meaningless universe. We make ethics to guide us through life and give our lives meaning. D. Ethics are political tools used by those in power to control and rule the populace. The main purpose of ethics is to fool the oppressed person and make them serve those in power, which reinforces everyone's position in the system. Or E, whatever it is that you believe. So, what do you guys think? Where would you put yourselves and why?
Closest to C, I think. That is something about bringing meaning to a meaningless universe.
So that's sort of like the existentialist idea of like you introduce meaning to life and to the universe.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything universal. I mean, I guess I think that everyone forms their own opinions about what's ethical, and that yeah, I feel like, I mean, I'm not even convinced that my ethics are consistent or valid. They're just whatever I think. And they're just kind of whatever scaffolding my brain creates to sort of rationalize about whatever situation I'm currently in.
Mark, what do you think?
I probably agree with A and B.
A and B. Okay, so you think there is something like a fundamentally real ethic, but also it's useful for ordering civilization.
Yeah, and I probably also agree that it's developed through evolution.
Cool. I would
Wait, are they fundamentally? I don't want to interrupt, but are they? So if they're developed through evolution and like they, are sort of an aspect of human civilization, are they actually real? And do they exist regardless of what people believe? Well, okay, so maybe they're real. That's kind of a loaded question, but it's like they exist regardless of what people believe.
Yeah.
I guess I could see that how that's even possible.
I think it requires some metaphysics, like there being something almost like, if not definitely God, to justify.
I mean, you can have because they can also be different ethics, right? As in you could say that humans have their own ethical system that they develop through evolution, right? And then you could also say that there is also like a transcendental ethical system that also happens to be true.
I
Yeah,
see.
that's an interesting one. I think I probably share
I'm not even
B and
sure if
C with you. I would also say D is probably true. So I think
You're saying C and D?
B, C, and D, which is too many answers because it's everything but A. But I guess mostly for me, I think it's mostly C, meaning I think for me it's mostly something that I make for myself to provide meaning. But I would think for the majority of civilization and history, and today, it's B and D really, which is it's both society creating ethics to sort of order itself and not fall into chaos and anarchy, but it's also just political tool that those in power use to oppress those who are not in power, or just to control really. So like you could think about it sort of like if you're a monarch, right, and you want to reinforce a system in which you get to make all decisions. You can sort of make an example of anyone who's loyal to the crown as like a really virtuous person. Oh, look at how loyal this person is to the crown. This is a great person who's going to go to heaven and, is a very ethical and correct person. And they use this to sort of inspire others to be loyal to the crown. Because I think there is some fundamental drive that we all have to sort of follow some form of ethics, probably because there's an evolutionary drive to it. But I think that's usually just capitalized on by whoever happens to hold power in any particular civilization. Yeah. And now I'd be like careful not to say, that the very foundation ethic lies upon is just the patriarchy, and it's sort of just like a weapon used to oppress. But I will say, ethics is sort of like there is a reason you have the guide. That's why I also think C is true. So there is a reason why you want to follow ethics, I think. And I think it is good for you. Well, good, how can you even judge that without having fundamental ethics? But I think it's probably, I would say it doesn't increase world suck usually, or at the very least it wouldn't increase your personal suck. But I think you should be aware that most of it, if not all of it, is unless you came up with it on your own somehow, and even then, it probably arrived at sort of to serve someone. So it's sort of like a tool used against you. But it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. I don't think all oppression... I don't think oppression can have positive... Well, I don't think oppression can't have positive side effects, right? So I think ethics is probably a very good side effect of oppression, if nothing else. And at the very least, it's that.
Oh, jeez.
I don't know. Please provide counter arguments. I don't want this to be like a monologue. What do you guys think?
In terms of what,
justify your positions, really.
Well, first I'll say I generally do agree with C, other than the meaningless universe part. And I generally do agree with D, without the main purpose of ethics being it's not the main thing about ethics, but it can be used to that end of fooling the oppressed.
Yeah. I don't know.
I feel like the only thing you know is the inside of your own head, and so I feel like you can't really. I feel like ethics just live inside your brain, and I'm not even convinced that ethics are real. I'm not sure that anything's real.
I can definitely make an example for a universe in which they would be fundamentally transcendental and real. I don't know that that's the one we live in, right? I can't prove it, but I mean, I think you and I like to talk a lot about the simulation theory, right? So if we have a coder who made the universe and like sort of programmed it, hardwired in, so they actually recognize what human beings are or whatever other living creatures are in this universe, and they have like a tracking system. So if an individual does something that they consider to be ethically good, then they increase 1 ethics point. That universe, I think we can confidently say, has a fundamentally real ethics. Now, if we live in it or not, regardless, I don't think, because we can't know that, I don't think we can claim that ethics fundamentally exist or that they don't fundamentally exist, because I don't think we have proof either way. I mean, you can believe they exist or not, but it'd just be a belief you have.
So I think your example's valid, but I feel like it's hard to say what you should believe if there's no way to prove something. I mean, it's like, I don't know, I guess I just pretend that things are real because that's like, just convenient.
Right.
It's like,
I mean, it'd be really hard to believe, it'd be really hard to believe last Thursdayism, even if there's no way to disprove it, right?
Well, I mean, you can just acknowledge that you have no idea if anything's real, and that's the fundamental position that I hold, I guess. But it's like, for all intents and I don't let that, I don't think about that very much. I just go through my day as if it were real. For all intents and purposes, it is real.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything we can do to get...
Should I explain my position?
Please do. I was just trying to generate more of that. Okay. Yeah.
So, as far as why So, Immanuel Kant had... I haven't read a ton of Kant, but I purchased 2 of his books. But from what I know about him, he had this idea called transcendental categories, and essentially what those are a priori assumptions that like all humans make that don't have any empirical verification. Like you can't look at them. I mean, you can't like look in like a microscope and see it. Like for example, like time would be one. Meaning that time is not something like every human experiences time going in from beginning to end, and you can't look in a microscope and see time, right? It's something we assume, right? And these are like the same things with ethics. I don't think there's anyone in the world who never had some sort of ethical framework, because whether or not it's like conscious or unconscious. Because when you make a decision, right, you have to weigh the options of like in order to make a decision, and you're gonna say one option is better than the other one, right? And so like ethics are kind of an inherent thing to what we do as human beings of living a life. You have to do this, and so that's a transcendental category. And so really it's then you have to look at then if we believe all this stuff and there's no material, observational, empirical verification for them, how can those not be real, really? So, like, materialists are generally, I think, they believe that there's something they posit and believe that, like, something outside of themselves exists, right? And then, therefore, we ourselves don't exist then because we're essentially just atoms, right? And whereas with like the idealist position, which I agree with, we posit that like consciousness, our mental processes are the fundamental basis of reality, and then through those mental processes we see the world, we see the material world, but it doesn't begin in the material world. And so things like ethics are real, because we feel them.
It's kind of like feelings don't care about your facts. It's like
literally, yes, I do say yes.
That's pretty good.
So yeah, I do say they are a real aspect of the universe, and they are transcendental because they are beyond material consideration.
So sort of like from Descartes' assumption, where you only know about, or sorry, you only assume that your consciousness exists, and the rest you figure out from there. Then ethics would have to exist because you believe in them, and it's almost stronger than the assumption that the rest of the universe exists, because that one you can only sort of believe in because you sense it.
I think it's a little different from Descartes. I don't know a ton about Descartes, but it's really what's most real to me is the closest things to me. You know, what I fundamentally feel, my consciousness. Like when someone says like consciousness doesn't exist, like that doesn't really make sense to me, because that's all I really know is my consciousness, and like things like love and like all these other like really deep, and like fear. All these deep feelings are really what is the most real things, and like things like you know, gravity and all these theories, like they are real, but I don't think they really are as real, I guess. Like we can grasp them through like other means, which we do consciously understand, but it's not as close to us, I guess. Another thing, I think. Another way of looking at this is that like I think the very fact that we have language for these things like ethics and really any word, I think in a sense it is real, because our minds are able to understand it. And I think something like the word nothing, for example, you can't act like language kind of fails with the word nothing and like non-existence, right? Because when you picture non-existence or nothingness, you picture like blackness, right? But blackness is not nothing, really. You know, you can't.
I mean, I think there is some
really
fundamental idea.
Darkness.
Like there is some fundamental perception of nothing, I think. If you really try hard enough, I feel like you can understand it. I think I kind of understand the word.
You can
it's hard.
logically get there.
Not logically, like you can. I think you can perceive it by trying to think about nothing. If you try hard enough, I think you can perceive it.
Perception. Perception. Let's call it. It assumes that something exists, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perceive it in the first place. But where you get non-existence is if you have existence, then logically you must have non-existence. Really, that's in that way it exists. But really, fundamentally, existence exists. I guess is what I'm saying.
I would actually argue it's probably more of the materialist point of view is that nothing doesn't exist, because the materialist point of view can only describe real things that exist, whereas the sort of consciousness part, right? I think consciousness can think more about things like the absence of something. I think I forget which philosopher talked about this. I think it was Hegel, but I forget. This idea that, you know, if you're going to a cafe or something and you're trying to meet with your friend John, and so, you know, you go to the cafe and you realize John isn't there. Well, how do you do that? Do you look at everyone in the cafe and see, this is not John, this is not John, this is not John? You keep going until you've counted everyone, and you've counted 0 Johns. So therefore, John is not here. Well, not really. You sort of look around at nothingness, and you realize there's an absence of John here. So I think we kind of understand fundamentally the absence of existence, in a way that isn't reflected by like material perspective on the universe?
Well, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's not. How would you say? You non-existence is like, but the thing is when you do think about that, when you have to know who John is in the first place in order to be able to say, to really conceptualize, to really understand that John doesn't exist. Like, you can have, like, I don't know, some logical framework to get there, but like it's like what was that quote? It was a Stalin quote, like one death is a tragedy, a million is a statistic, really, is what he said. And what that means is that you can't understand, a human can't understand a million deaths. Like, we can't even conceptualize that number.
Mm-hmm.
Our brains are just too small, right? But we can, but like one death is like, we know what that is. It is a tragedy, right? And so, like, what I say is with a concept like non-existence, like our brains never really, like, it doesn't exist fundamentally, and our minds have to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just impossible to understand because we've never actually experienced it, like, evolutionarily, like, ever, right? Because, like, by definition, it can't be experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I think my conclusion from this tangent has been our next episode better be about consciousness, because it seems like there's a lot here. I think we just got here from the ethics are fundamentally real, but I guess do you guys have any more groundbreaking points before we conclude this episode of The Unlightenment?
No, I don't think so.
No.
All right, that is good. Thank you for coming. Thanks for tuning in.
It's not bad.
It doesn't increase roll check.
I mean, it's not great, but, like, you know.
All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody. All right, come back next week.